We processed our last batch of chickens on a Saturday morning in October. 42 birds, my wife and I, and one neighbor who comes every year for the same reason we show up when he needs an extra hand. By noon, every bird was cleaned, chilled, packed. By evening, they were in the chest freezer in the cellar, sorted by weight and labeled. We had raised every one of those birds from chicks delivered by mail in April. From the day those boxes arrived to the day the last bird went into the freezer was 22 weeks. The cost per pound, including chicks, feed, bedding, and processing supplies, came to less than half of what we would have paid for the equivalent at any grocery store. And what we got was better in every measurable way than what the store sold. That is the argument for raising your own meat birds in one paragraph, and everything I'm going to show you today is how we do it. This is not a simple undertaking. I want to be honest about that before anything else, because videos that make homestead meat production look effortless do you a disservice and lead people into the first year unprepared. It requires real planning, physical work at butcher time, and a commitment to showing up every day for the 3 weeks while the birds are in the brooder and every few days thereafter until processing day. What it is not is complicated. The skills involved are entirely learnable. The equipment is basic, and most of it you likely already have or can borrow. The knowledge that governs the whole thing is the same knowledge my grandfather applied in this county 60 years ago, and I grew up watching him do it. I am going to show you the complete process from the arrival of day-old chicks through butchering, cooling, packing, and freezing, so you understand the full arc of the work before you decide whether it is right for your family and your situation. Before I show you, let me say this plainly. If you want the full collection of the old homestead methods that were handed down in our family, from the garden and orchard to the pantry, cellar, and the everyday keeping of a house, I have gathered them into one simple ebook. You will find it in the description below. Now, let us get back to the topic. For a family of 6 eating chicken twice a week through the year, you need roughly 100 birds. That number sounds large and becomes manageable when you understand that meat chickens are not laying hens. They are a purpose-bred bird called the Cornish cross, developed to convert feed to muscle at a rate no heritage breed can match. A Cornish cross raised on good feed and clean water reaches 8 to 10 pounds live weight in 7 to 9 weeks. You are not managing these birds for months. You raise them for 2 months, you process them, and you are done until next year. Most families find it practical to do 2 batches rather than 1, 50 birds in spring and 50 in late summer, which smooths the labor and the freezer load rather than doing everything in one intense push. Order your chicks from a reputable hatchery that ships day-old chicks by mail. This is the standard method for homestead poultry, and it works reliably. The post office calls you when the box arrives. Chicks are shipped immediately after hatching, while they still carry the nutrition of the yolk sac, which sustains them for roughly 72 hours without food or water. Order a few more than you need, typically 10% extra, because losses in the first week are a normal part of the process and should be expected. Order them to arrive in late April or early May for your spring batch, when outdoor temperatures are rising and the brooder management is most forgiving. The brooder is the first critical infrastructure you need. It is a heated, enclosed space that maintains the chicks at the right temperature from arrival until they are feathered enough to regulate their own body heat, which takes approximately 3 weeks. A brooder can be as simple as a large cardboard box with a heat lamp suspended above it, or as elaborate as a dedicated wooden structure with a thermostat-controlled heat source. My grandfather used a corner of the barn partitioned with old boards. We use a dedicated wooden brooder box we built once and have used every year since. What matters is the temperature and the ability to adjust it. Start at 90 degrees Fahrenheit at chick level for the first week and reduce by 5 degrees each subsequent week until you reach outdoor ambient temperature. Watch the chicks rather than only the thermometer. Chicks piling under the lamp are cold. Chicks spread to the edges avoiding the lamp are too warm. Chicks distributed evenly throughout the space are comfortable. Feed is straightforward. Meat chicks eat a high-protein starter feed from arrival until approximately 4 weeks, then transition to a grower or finisher feed for the remainder of their time. Water is the more critical variable. Chicks that run out of water even briefly in the first weeks are set back significantly and may never perform to their potential. Check water twice a day without exception. For a batch of 50 chicks, you will go through approximately 250 pounds of feed from start to finish. Buy it in bulk from a local feed store, rather than in small bags from a farm supply chain if you can, because the price difference is meaningful. At around 4 weeks, the birds go outside into what is called a broiler pen, or a chicken tractor, a movable enclosed structure that sits on the ground and is moved daily or every other day to fresh grass. The birds have access to forage, which adds nutrition to the meat and dramatically improves the flavor compared to birds raised in confinement on wire their entire lives. My grandfather raised his birds in a fixed yard because chicken tractors were not part of his vocabulary or his method, but the principle of access to fresh ground and vegetation absolutely was. He moved his birds to a fresh section of the yard every week, which is the same idea in a less systematic form. The daily move of a proper tractor requires about 5 minutes, and the birds respond to it visibly every time, spreading out immediately to forage across the fresh ground. You will not regret the movable pen. The flavor difference in the finished bird compared to confinement raised is real, and once you have tasted it, you will not want to go back. Processing day is the day most people are uncertain about before they have done it, and matter of fact about after they have done it twice. You will need a killing cone or a strong helper, a scalding pot maintained at approximately 145 degrees Fahrenheit, a plucker if you can access one, and a clean table and ice water for cooling the finished birds. The sequence is kill, bleed, scald, pluck, eviscerate, chill. Each step is specific in its requirements and learnable from a skilled person who has done it before. If you have never processed a bird, find someone local who has and process your first batch alongside them. The knowledge transfers quickly from watching to doing, and the second year, you will work confidently. My grandfather processed birds every autumn of his life, and I processed my first bird beside him when I was in my early 20s. He showed me once, and it became ordinary. Scalding is the step that most determines whether the plucking goes well or badly. Too cool, and the feathers do not release. Too hot, and the skin tears when you pull them. 145 degrees for 45 to 60 seconds is the standard. Dip the bird by the feet, move it in a slow circle in the water, and test a few feathers from the breast. When they pull cleanly without resistance, the bird is ready. A mechanical plucker, which can often be rented from a local feed store or farm cooperative, processes a bird in about 15 seconds once the scalding is right. Hand plucking takes 4 to 6 minutes per bird. For a batch of 50 birds, the choice between those two options is obvious. Evisceration is the step with the longest learning curve and the one where cleanliness matters most. The goal is to remove the internal organs without rupturing the intestines or the bile duct, either of which will contaminate the meat and require careful trimming to salvage the bird. Work slowly on the first birds. Speed comes with repetition. The finished cavity should be clean, pink, and free of any yellow or green material. The liver, heart, and gizzard are worth saving, and are among the finest parts of the bird when properly prepared. Cooling is not optional, and the timing matters. The finished bird needs to reach below 40 degrees Fahrenheit within 4 hours to comply with food safety standards and to ensure the best quality in the finished meat. We use a large cooler packed with ice water, with the birds fully submerged. The ice water bath also improves the texture of the finished bird by allowing the muscles to relax before freezing. Plan your processing to finish in time to have the birds in ice water by noon if you start at dawn, which gives you the afternoon to bag, label, and freeze. Freeze the birds in individual zip bags with the weight and processing date written on the bag. A vacuum sealer is worth having if you plan to store birds longer than 6 months. Standard zip bags are adequate for up to 6 months, with good quality. Separate the birds by size and store them in the chest freezer sorted by size, which makes meal planning straightforward through the year and helps you work through the freezer stock in order. The math of the whole operation over a year is what makes it worth considering honestly. Feed, chicks, supplies, and consumables for 100 birds in 2 batches runs roughly $800 to $1,000 at current prices in most of the country. The finished weight of 100 processed Cornish crossbirds is somewhere between 500 and 600 pounds of chicken. At any grocery store, that quantity of whole chicken would cost $2,000 or more. The difference is labor, which amounts to a few hours a week across the season and 1 full day per batch at processing time. For a family willing to put in that work, the economics are straightforward and the quality of what goes into your freezer is something no grocery store can match. Tell me in the comments whether you have raised meat birds before, and if so, what your batch size is, and if you have not, tell me what part of the process seems most uncertain. The question I receive most often is about processing day, and I am always glad to address it specifically for whoever asks it in the comments. And tell me your county and your state while you were there. I read every single one. Next time, I'm going to show you how we raise, cure, and store our own pork through the year. The methods my grandfather used that kept a full side of pork perfectly usable from October through the following spring without a single day in a freezer. And why a family with a chest freezer and the right curing knowledge can extend that considerably further than most people imagine. The people who built this country with their own two hands knew things we are only just now truly beginning to remember.